Hey, everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of Geeks from the Multiverse. We have an Evolve episode coming right now, and we are going to be talking about the real F word. And I think everyone thinks they know what the real F word is. Sometimes it just comes easy and automatic, but there is another F word that we're going to be talking about. It's not one that's very easy to say, and people generally tend not to do it. It's called forgiveness. That's right. We're not doing a soft, just let it go version of forgiveness. We're talking about the real thing. So let's get into it.
Evolve, adapt, overcome. Power up your mind and level up your soul. It just takes one small step to be
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I love that Evolve song.
Every time we do that, I mean, I really am glad that nobody watches us. I really do.
Hey, one day we'll be on video. You know what I mean? And
we're
be
gonna
like,
do all
everybody
that?
can laugh at us. And
Fair enough. Fair enough.
but welcome again to this is episode 164. John, I can't believe that we're on this, but welcome to Geeks from the Multiverse. And that's right. Usually about once a month we do our Evolve episodes. And the whole premise and the whole mission of these Evolve episodes that we do is just to help you become a better person one step at a time and to evolve, adapt, and overcome, just like just like the song. So I am one of your hosts, Grumpy Beard. With me as always
Is Captain Lestache. Everyone, I find this interesting, Matt, too, because I will say before we do our CTAs, I dabbled in Whatnot. I don't know if you know what Whatnot is.
roughly.
Okay, so kind of like eBay, but a little bit quicker than that. So I mean, it's like live and all this stuff, and so I put my name as Captain Lestache, and they're like, they're like, that's a really interesting name. I said, yeah, it's French. And they start laughing, and then I keep going on about it, and then it's just funny because like every time with Whatnot, it's interesting enough where you could buy like all these different things on there, but at the same time, yes, I'm gonna say it because your boy here, I know Matt is not a big fan of it, but I'm not saying he wouldn't be at some point. Maybe not. I don't know. But yes, I was looking at like Pokemon cards, and Matt's like Pokemon. He's like
Pokemon.
There you go. There's
There you
that. There you go. And the funny thing is though is like I was like looking up, trying to figure out who can like give me the Pokemon cards I was looking for, and like I was like, hey, can I have like this, and that? And they're like, yeah, we really don't have that, but you can try this next one. And so I kept going through, and then after a while, I was like, this is really addicting, and I'm like, this is not something I really wanted to do because, buddy, let's just say that by the end I was done. Like it was like one night of it. It was bad. I'm like, you want to talk about an addiction? Don't do Whatnot. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Don't do it because it's not worth your time, and you can definitely spend some money that you shouldn't be spending. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, it'd be great if I had the money to spend. Anyways,
No, I'm just saying. Just if I was anybody. So again, whoever's listening, if you have that money, go for it. I will say that do it if you want to. If you don't fucking do it. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right. So, yes, again, welcome to our podcast here, GFTM Podcast, episode 164. And we are diving into the real F word. But real quick, like we do want to give you, we do want to ask for that fist bump, which is our follow, interact, subscribe. This says share, and it's weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't know where this is just share and talk about the show. No. Tell your damn friends. That's what it is.
Your damn friends.
So follow, interact, subscribe, and
Tell your damn friends.
tell your damn friends. Because we are on YouTube. It's more of the audio portion because we don't do video just quite yet. But we are on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. I mean, we're on like 40 different podcast platforms.
Point is, you can listen to us.
You can listen to us. You can go right to our website, and all of our full episodes are on our podcast page there on the website. We have a blog. We have our merch store. We have a whole media page. I mean, there's a whole lot more you can do. Especially like you can visit our Evolve page, and John and I actually been talking about some additions that we want to do, and I won't mention it right now, John,
Good
but
idea. Good idea.
um, we want to add. I mean, I'll briefly say it, but I'm not going to fully define it. But we want to add material. We want to add more resources to that Evolve page that will help guide, I guess.
Yeah, and the biggest thing about that too is because when Matt and I wanted to do Evolve, I mean, we wanted to basically give back to the community in some way that we can. I mean, we're not full on experts in all of this, but trying to be as hopefully knowledgeable and trying to give you guys some sort of maybe guide, right, to figure out what it is that you need to either learn or maybe share with a friend or whatever the case may be, right? It's allowing you guys to dive into, what Evolve is and hopefully, kind of spread that word because like it's literally besides like our main podcast, like it's kind of like a side project that we've been trying to really promote as well.
It's just that shareable content. Like these episodes are not meant to just keep to yourself. Like we really do need you to share out the episodes. When we get closer to actually having these, materials that we want to do for the Evolve page, and I mean, there's a whole resource vault. You can click on different, you can look at all the resources that we have there, but we really wanted to do some like guides that you could actually print out and just like, hey, I'm thinking of you here. Here's this like little resource that I found on this random website. But it's the whole point of this is like we just want to help and be that resource for people that maybe you're just listening to our podcast and you've just been listening, and then all of a sudden we do an Evolve episode that really connects with what you're dealing with. That's the point.
Right. And, and for us, it's like I said, it's something that we're passionate about. I mean, we both come from mental health backgrounds as well as, addiction in that sense. But I mean, again, we're not claiming to be, subject matter experts. We're basically saying is, we're just trying to help in any way that we can. We're trying to give back in some ways to, our community or even just in general, because at the same time, without your guys' support and everything else that we do, we feel like we need to try to give back as much as we can because again being local to, yes, we're going to say New Hampshire. Okay, everyone's like, what the hell's New Hampshire? Is that a random city? No, it's an actual state, so learn geography is all I got to say right now. All right, so my point is we're not, it's not like we're living in California, it's not like we're living in some big ass city or big state or whatever. We're small, right, but we're strong. That's the whole point of what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that you guys, especially geeks in general too, you know, it's not just about everyday people. I mean, we are a geek culture podcast, but at the same time, we want to make sure that anybody who, does listen or anything like this, you have a resource. You're not alone in this and that you don't feel like you have to, live through life, by yourself. I mean, because shit, think about it. I mean, Matt and I do this podcast together. I mean, I couldn't do this by myself. Matt's like, I sure as shit know that you could do this by yourself. That's for damn sure. But
I wasn't going to say nothing.
no,
man.
but I knew what you were thinking because he's like, yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. But yeah, no, and moving on to the good old F word.
You know what, John?
What?
Go F yourself.
Wow, that's pretty screwed up.
I had to say, but
Yeah.
I mean, we are talking about the real F word, and I didn't just go, tell John to go F himself. We are not talking about the word fuck. We will probably say
for
it.
describing that. Yes,
We will probably say it a few times.
we've already
but
had said it a few times, but yeah.
we are talking about forgiveness, and
Hold on, ready? The hardest thing for a man to probably do.
it's probably the hardest thing for anybody to do.
No,
it is the right thing to do, but I think if we're being completely honest, I'm being completely honest.
Let's hear this.
Staying angry is way easier. Right?
Nope.
Like,
Wait. Mr. Grumpy Beard is saying angry
hey,
is the best way to go. Okay.
it's way easier, and I'll tell you what, because anger gives you energy. It gives you a certain level of clarity. It gives you someone to blame.
Yeah, he's like John.
And when you take this idea of forgiveness, it strips away all of that. And I think that there is a reason why people hold on to hurt longer than they would hold on to peace, because when you feel hurt, it can feel like justified, right? Like it feels like something that's earned. And when you talk about, and we're going to talk, I mean, we're going to go deep into forgiveness, but when you put forgiveness into this equation, forgiveness is work. It's not something that you just kind of like, hey, I forgave you. No, you have to work. And I'm just going to say, like, a lot of people, they don't do the work.
Now, my first question is, Matt, what was that impression you just did? Because I couldn't really take you seriously in that moment, but I forgave you. Like you had to draw it out. No, it's okay. No,
it was for dramatic effect.
I know.
It's that idea of like, well, I forgive you, but
yeah, there's always
Yeah.
a but. And here's the other thing, right? So yes, anger can be loud and immediate as well as kind of addictive, right? It keeps the story alive, right? And so forgiveness is quiet, slow, and feels like you're letting something go before you're ready. And so I feel like, especially with forgiveness, it is a journey. Because here's the other thing. I mean, when you think about forgiveness, it's affecting someone's trust, right? Because let's say, like, sure, that you do the same thing over and over and over and over again, and then they're not trusting you, and so like, sure, forgiveness, it is a longer journey. It's not something that can feel like immediate because, like, I can't tell you how many times I have to give forgiveness to my wife for things that I've done, and then it takes like almost all day, and then finally maybe we're good in a good spot, but it's also, and it kind of sucks too because you can also throw in the word guilt because forgiveness and guilt can kind of go side
Yeah.
and side. And so that's the other thing is like, when you're, it's almost a realization of realizing that you're putting in this time and this effort for, forgiving somebody. And that's the other thing is like, you look at, for example, like the 12 steps. I'm just using it as an example, right? Part of it is forgiveness. You have to forgive.
Well, and it's not just like, I think one of the steps is forgiving yourself. And like there's a whole nother step where you're meant to like make a list of everybody that you had
wrong.
Wronged or had grievances with. And you're meant to go to every single, whether it's 5 people or whether it's 200 people, like you're meant to go through your entire list of everybody that you've ever lied to, wronged, I had a grievance with, or anything. And you're meant to like, hey,
I'm sorry for what I did.
I'm sorry for what, and that's the whole thing with forgiveness. Like it's work, it's not easy. And what the thing is, like, you can struggle with forgiving something or someone,
Mhm.
but I doubt there's a lot of people struggling to stay mad.
Oh, that's true. That's probably a very true statement. I mean, and the other thing is too is that forgiveness is, and this is where I'm going to go with this too. So when we talk about a generation thing too, we're living in an age of instant gratification. Forgiveness is not instant gratification, my
No,
friend.
no,
I'm gonna
no.
tell you that right now. It is something you have to work, you have to earn, you have to.
And I mean, you
do
can
all this.
You can literally, whether it's a family member or a loved one, or maybe it's like an ex or something, whoever it is, doesn't matter.
Maybe it's your co-host. No, no.
You can literally go up to them and say, "Hey, I'm sorry. Like, I was this. Like, you were in the right. Like, I was in the wrong. Like, you could do your forgiveness thing all together, but the other person is the one that has to be like, yeah, I forgive you."
Or
And
they
that
can-
might never. I mean, that might take years, or may never happen.
That's true. And I mean, and the other thing is too, depending on, like you're saying about like who you're forgiving, you know, the other big piece to this too is that, and I'll say it, it's much easier to stay angry with a coworker than it would be to be still angry with,
It's
let's say, a
much easier
significant
to
other.
stay angry at a co-host.
A co-host like you, John. No, like, but it's true though. I mean, because like it depends on that level of relationship that you have with that person. Because,
Right.
sure, it might be easier to say, hey, man, I'm sorry that I didn't, follow up on that, TPS report, or something like that, than basically saying to your wife,
Yeah.
like,
I'm gonna
hey,
need you to come in on Saturday.
Saturday and come in
Yeah.
and do that. Yeah, that'd be great. No, I mean, but it's true though. I mean, because it's like the depending on your relationships with individuals, it's whether or not you want to work on that forgiveness part. Because again, the more people that you care about, of course, the forgiveness part is going to be a lot harder than it would be for a random coworker or somebody like that, or a
Right.
co-host.
Or a co.
The co-host. But no, and then
So-
again, so like the tension, right?
Yeah.
Because the thing is that, the easier in the moment, it's usually the thing that keeps you stuck the longest. Nobody struggles to stay mad. People struggle to stop. So you're right. Because, when you always say, like, man, I can feel that tension in the room where, man, I, cut like butter, there's a bunch of tension. I think I don't remember the damn quote now. But basically, when you think of the word tension, yeah, I mean, it's very hard to sit in a room and that you basically, I'll say it, and yes, I'm going to use the real F word this time. You fucked up, okay? Like there is tension, let's say, because you're either seeing that person, like their body language, their what they're saying, and their tone of how they're saying it, and you can feel that, and you can definitely hear it for sure, and look at it. But if you're willing to put in that work and say, hey, I'm sorry for what I did, I'm sorry that I burnt the toast, and I'm sorry that I did all this. And then they go, yeah, I can't forgive you for that, brother. I'm sorry. Just get out of my face.
Yeah.
Then you're like, well, shit, what do I do now? Well, maybe not burn the toast next time. That'd be great. You're like, wait a minute. Why
This is like your third fucking time. So if you just stop doing it.
Stop burning the toast, man. No, but it's true. I mean, like, because that's the thing where forgiveness is just, it's just like every other word I feel like we've ever talked about. It's just it's a very hard concept to
It's a very hard
to do.
And that's our first question is like, why is forgiveness so damn hard? And I think there's 6 points here, and I think if we just take 2 at a time,
That's fine.
I think we'd be good. I'll take the first 2, and why is forgiveness so damn hard? And I honestly, I mean, I kind of said this earlier, where no one struggles to stay mad. Staying angry is much easier because it requires no transformation. Like you don't have to reflect, grow, or process anything. You can just keep replaying the event that happened and reinforcing why you feel right and feel the way that you do. Whereas forgiveness, on the other hand, requires you to actually do something with or about that pain, right? Like staying angry is just easy. Like you can just be angry, and it requires almost little effort.
Absolutely. I mean, it's probably one of the easiest emotions to get into.
And anger can give a person like that sense of identity. Grumpy Beard.
He's like, my identity.
Well, Grumpy Beard is more grumpy than angry, but it can give that person that sense of identity, that momentum. Like being angry can feel like there's action even when nothing is changing, whereas forgiveness is kind of the opposite of that. Like forgiveness feels like stillness, and for a lot of people, when you're in that still quiet moment, right? Like it's uncomfortable because it almost forces you to face what's underneath all of that anger and all of those various emotions. Maybe it's just not anger, maybe it's like sadness or depression or whatever you're feeling. When you're still and you're in that mode of like, I need to forgive this person, that's the uncomfortable thing, because now like you have to face like that event that happened and actually like be the person that's like, I understand that this happened, but I need to move to that forgiveness. Never mind. I'll just be angry.
He's like, I'm grumpy
like,
Beard.
never mind.
That's what it is.
Never mind. I'll just be angry
Well,
about it.
and the other thing I was just going to mention is more of a metaphor, and you'll kind of laugh at this now too. It's kind of like a stagnant room, like we're sitting in right now, because we're sweating our balls off, for example, because you're just sitting and you're like, Well, that's really hot in here. I can't do anything about the AC or anything. But I mean, it's true because it's an uncomfortable feeling of not knowing how to, because the other, I was going to say this, like the other thing is you can't control anything. Like the one forgiving, cannot control this. It's like
Right.
you gave the ball to the other person. Now it's in their court. Now you have to
And
wait to see.
I mean, I will give an example, not a specific example from like mine or yours or John Schmo's life, whatever. Just a general example. Like if your spouse physically cheated on you with somebody else,
Mm.
like this is that area. I mean, it happens all the time, and it happens to. I think the actual statistic, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's like if you took 5 couples, it happens to about 3 of them.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that happens to a lot of couples where your wife or your husband physically cheats on the on the partner, whoever it is, and staying angry is much easier. Like you did this, you did that. Like I cannot forgive you for doing this. Whereas like on the other side, like forgiveness means that you actually have to address the event, the elephant in the room, mind you, of what actually happened, and you have to force yourself to move past it.
And of course, it's much easier to stay angry. But you're right. I mean, most people, I would say, especially in an event like that, not many people are going to move forward from that
No,
unless,
they're going to stay angry. They'll be like, "Listen, you and me, we're done. Like, get your
well,
shit, get out." And it's one of those things like you will never ever talk to that person again. And what sucks is like if you're in a marriage where kids are involved
there you go. That's what I was going to mention.
and that happens, and now you're like, no, I don't care if you are the mother of the pope, like you need to leave, you need to get out, and you just stay angry, and then you completely like basically these aren't your kids anymore. Like you made your choice, you made your bed, go sleep in that other guy's bed. You know what I mean? It's like
No,
go
but that is a very common thing.
common thing. I mean, you look at divorce, I mean that's pretty much
That's pretty much how that goes for
Yeah.
the most part. I mean, well, Matt's not wrong in that department. When it comes down to stuff like that, I mean, there were uncontrollable factors that sometimes you just go, how do I get past it, or how do I deal with all this? I mean, there is no easy answer. It's not like you have a book on, how do I achieve forgiveness for somebody and all this stuff. No, there's. I
Yeah.
mean, if that was the case, shit, then everything would just be easy.
I
in
just
life.
made you just pick up the Forgiveness for Dummies book, right? Like, and
Yeah, I'd call it a day. No, but like, kind of moving forward here, there's always a protective element to staying hurt, which that is true. And if you stay angry, you don't have to risk being vulnerable again. Right? Forgiveness can feel like lowering your defenses, which I would say that is very true for a lot of people. Even when it's actually about internal release, not external trust. So the other thing is too, and I think for a lot of people, when you're letting your guard down, and I feel like this is a natural defense mechanism for everybody. When you've been hurt or when you've been, duped or, in all these, sure, use whatever words you want to use, you're putting yourself out there, and you're trying to see, how this is going to go, because you maybe have forgiven so many times and then it just comes back and it bites you in the ass because of the fact that it's happened so many times. And so when you're lowering those defenses, you know, it's trying to say, okay, well, am I going to get screwed over again? Or is this going to be another outcome that could actually be meaningful or, not be the same reaction as before? And that's the hard part of this too. But, people also often choose anger because it's familiar, right? It's if you've been carrying, something for so long or such a long time, it becomes part of your normal emotional state. So letting it go can feel unfamiliar, almost like losing a piece of yourself. Let it go. Let it go. Anyways, no, I
wow,
mean,
you went there, huh?
yeah, oh, I sure did. If I was going to talk about that, I might as well. No, and it's true because, let's say you were a very happy go lucky person and you were forgiving people left and right, all the time. And then it just starts chipping away at you, chipping away. And then you become into Grumpy Beard, for example. He's like, and then you turn into Matt. No, I'm joking. No, I'm just saying, like, you get to a point where
And this is the reason I don't
Nah,
forgive you.
He's like, I don't forgive you now because of that. No, but, for us, it's like, we're sitting here, reading this, but we're just saying, at the end of the day, when you're trying to, forget, some of the stuff that's happened, of course, it's not, easy to just do. I mean, because the other thing is too, right? So you will never sorry, let me rephrase this part. You will never forget what happens to you. You can forgive people, but you'll never forget that piece of it because that'll always stay a part of you. But whether or not you choose to let it define you, there we go. That's a different story because that's the thing where, with forgiveness, like, sure, you can be hurt so many times. You can, things can happen, and it really doesn't define you for who you are. But if you let it continue to fester and get you more angrier or this and that, and then let's say you're in a similar situation again, or you see your buddy in a similar situation as you, whatever, right? Or you start to fester in that, and it's like you're just getting yourself more amped and more angrier for something that, again, you don't have any control over.
Yeah.
So
the last two, I'm going to read them together because they kind of fit together. But forgiveness requires emotional effort that anger just doesn't require, right? Like it forces you to process what happened, accept that whatever happened can't be changed, and then to make that conscious decision to move forward. I mean, kind of what we've already said, but like when you are looking at forgiveness, like you have to make that conscious decision. Like I'm just going to move forward, and it's that level of effort that most people avoid. And I think that there is a misconception that forgiveness like feels good right away. Like
absolutely not.
as soon as I forgive this person, like it's going to be like a weight lifted off my chest. And when it doesn't, people will automatically assume like, oh, I must have done it wrong. And they'll, usually default back to anger or whatever emotion that they feel about the event, because at least that emotion feels more natural to them.
So I'm going to say this too, real quick. I know you're going to talk about this a little bit more. Not everybody in the world's going to like you, plain and simple, right? And so when again, the people you care about, I mean, I know it hurts when you want to forgive somebody for that, but that's the thing where, when you just said, when you feel like you didn't do it the right way, or, it just doesn't feel natural, or whatever whatever that might be, you got to think in the long term that, forgiveness is a journey. It's not just something that immediately happens and then, oh, okay, the world's all great, great and happy and everything else. No, I mean, it's work. We've been saying this. It's work. It's not.
Well, I forgive you, so our relationship is fixed now.
No, this is how Matt would say it. He'd be like, "I forgive you, you son of a bitch."
No, but I mean, some little facts here. I'll just give these real quick. But so there's been research in emotional processing that shows that unresolved anger can increase stress hormone levels like cortisol, which keeps the body in a prolonged state of tension. And clinical psychology often links long-term resentment. We all know what long-term resentment is. If you've ever had a family member who for 10, 20, 30, 40 years no longer talks to a sibling because guess what? Long-term resentment, right?
And it could be over the dumbest thing too.
It could be over the dumbest thing, but they link long-term resentment with increased anxiety, depression, and even like physical symptoms that would be like headaches, fatigue, stuff like that. Like,
when you're reading that,
that's crazy.
It is crazy. And I mean, the fact that, for example, your stress hormones, in a prolonged state of tension. I mean, and this is why when people say stress can kill you, this is why we're saying stress can kill you, because the thing is for so long, your body can only handle so much stress. And so when you're in that state of mind of like anger, like this and that, and
even stress can cause a lot of these things like anxiety and depression and the physical symptoms, even to the point of like feeling sick all the
Yes.
time. Like, this is what we're trying to get to is like, when you have, you hold on to these resentments, you hold on to these, like, well, so and so wronged me, and you just hold on to that. Like, I understand they wronged you, but at some level, you really do have to look at forgiveness and try to find that place, because it's just affecting you in, either emotional or physical ways.
Well, so for I'm going to give an example, right? So the quote I like to use here is, you can always forgive, but you'll never forget. Like kind of like what I mentioned before. Sure, you know, it's it's a hard thing to learn, and especially to do. But like for example, you know, if let's say a family member is, you know, upset with the fact that you're doing something that you shouldn't have been doing and doesn't believe that what you're doing is the right thing, you know sure, you know what, you can say otherwise, that you're like, I know what I'm doing is right, whether you believe me or not, and what you think may not matter in the sense of this. And you're understanding that this person's going to get angry this entire time. There's resentment, there's all these things that are coming into play, and then they do certain things that, let's say they piss you off, and they make sure that certain things about maybe the event that you're doing, or whatever that might be, right? Whatever it may be, it makes it harder for you to enjoy special occasions or things like that, and it hurts you because you don't want that person to be upset or angry, but at the same time, you can't change who they are, right? Because again, you're leaving that ball in their court, but your understanding of the fact that, yeah, you know what, they pissed you off, they did all this stuff, and at this point, all you can do is be like, yep, you know what, I'll forgive you for what that happened many many years ago, but yeah, you'll never forget, because at the same time, you have to remember to yourself, like, maybe you're not the one having to do the forgiving, but you're just saying, you know what, I'm going to always remember this, because if it happens again, guess what? Then you're going to be like, I'm done. We can't do this anymore. We have to move on from this. But
Yeah.
again, it's a lot harder than it is.
Yeah, so I would say like that's a good segue to the next topic, even though there's still a couple things in the other one, but like we'll move on to the next one, because it's, I think what you're saying fits this next like pillar that we're that
Yep.
we're talking about. And this is, forgiveness doesn't mean what you think it means. Um, you know, when we talk about forgiveness and reconciliation,
Yeah, that's true.
they're not the same thing. And confusing the two does cause a lot of damage. And what you're saying is like, I mean, you can physically forgive someone internally, not just like saying like, "Hey, I forgive you," and walking away. Like, you can forgive somebody in your heart
Right.
and still choose to not allow them in your life.
Correct.
It's a possibility. And what you're saying is like, you won't forget, but you can forgive. Like, it doesn't erase the consequences of like what has happened. You can forgive, someone can be forgiven, and they can still face, and they should still face the consequences of their actions, whether it's relational, emotional, or potentially legal. Like, it doesn't erase the consequences. You're still, you can forgive them, and you can say like, I mean, there's certainly someone, and you know exactly who I'm referring to. I'm not going to mention a name, but there is just somebody in my life that I have chosen not really to be much of a part of it.
Right.
And it's not because I didn't forgive him, because I did, but it's because he has continually made the same mistake. And I do not want that person necessarily to just be a part of my life, because he just keeps making the same mistake. And even though he's had consequences, he just seems to revert right back into, and it's like, what are you doing? Like,
Right.
come
And
on.
I mean, and here's the thing about, you know, because you could tell the same person the same thing saying, this is what you're doing wrong. They have to make it, they could probably make it 1,000 more, whatever, however many times it might be. And that is probably just sometimes the human nature of that person. And that just, unfortunately, until they understand what their consequences are doing, again, that's the hard part too, because for example, like I know Matt always jokes with me about like, hey man, you should probably help me help me out with some of these notes and doing all this. And I know, and I do forgive him because, or actually, let me rephrase it. I try to
Forgive me.
forgive you, forgive me. No, I'm just saying, like, yes, I know Matt does a lot, and I do appreciate all that he does. Right, I do feel that there are some times where, yeah, I need to do more, and I'm trying to work on it more because that's the thing. At least I'm acknowledging it. And that's the hard part too, is that acknowledging the overall piece to this, right? Because you have to admit when you're forgiving somebody, you have to acknowledge what you're doing. And you have to realize what it is that is causing this pain to that person and so on and so forth. But I know I was just kind of moving ahead, but like, in the case of this, right? So letting go of anger does not mean pretending the event didn't happen, right? Because again, you're always going to remember the event. You're always going to remember what exactly is going on. Real forgiveness acknowledges the pain fully instead of minimizing or ignoring it. And that is true, right? Because if you ignore it and if you minimize it, because all you're doing is bottling that shit up and you're just going to let it wait
Yeah.
and wait
And
and
that's
wait and
not,
keep
I
going.
mean, that's not a level of forgiveness. Like, when you're forgiving, like, you have to release the pain. And
That's true pain.
you're not forgetting that it happened, but you're also not just holding on to the pain. Like, this is what we're saying. Like, real forgiveness acknowledges that pain. You're not continuing to just hold it and be like, when that person, you know, maybe doesn't do this, whatever happened again, like maybe they just forget to take the trash out, or you're like, well, you remember that time that you did, like, that's not forgiveness. That's just you now weaponizing
Right.
what
What
had
happened?
happened.
You know who does a lot of this? Taylor Swift.
Trump. I mean,
I mean, wait, Trump? No, no. What I was going to say was, and this is why I'm joking. So this is why I'm saying when you're talking about, accepting it or at least acknowledging the painfully and instead of minimizing or ignoring it. This is why artists they do really well with this, because the reason why is because they make songs about it. And so that's why I was joking about Taylor Swift, because what does she do? She gets in a relationship and then, hey, let me make a song about it. And then no, and I'm not saying it's
yeah,
a bad
and then
thing,
she's keying your car and whatever.
anyways, no, but and then of course there is a major difference between forgiveness and tolerance. I like this. Right? So forgiving someone does not mean continuing to accept toxic behavior.
And that's kind of what I said in my example. Like,
Right.
you don't have to continue accepting this toxic behavior. You can, like the very first point that we said in this piece of it, like, you can forgive somebody and then choose to not allow them back into your life. Like, if they're going to continue having this toxic behavior, whether they're doing it or not doing it, if you've forgiven somebody and then they go ahead and do it again, you forgive them, but then they go and do it with somebody. It's like, you have to somehow separate yourself and be like, listen, like, I have completely forgiven you for what you did to me or to us, but you're continuing your behavior with other people. And I cannot do this and keep a level of forgiveness to you. Like, whatever happened between, like, yourself and this person, sure, forgive that. But then there's a level of when they go and do it to other people, it's not your forgiveness that you have to worry about now with this person, but you cannot allow that, like, toxic behavior. Like, hey, yeah, we'll hang out on Saturday. No, like, what are you doing?
Like what are you doing, kid? Like no, and I agree. And then, especially this one, right? So and this is an interesting one because yes, we are going to talk about a little bit of faith. Okay, a little bit of religious here, but the biblical perspective, right? Subtle but real. right? This is what it mentions. It says forgiveness is often framed as releasing the debt someone owes you, not pretending the debt never existed. That's a completely different mindset than what most people assume. So kind of like what I've already said, right? You're it's framing it as releasing the debt someone owes you and not pretending the debt never existed. So that's kind of what I've already said already is that you're saying, you know what? Okay, I know it was there. I know like this happened, but you're not forgetting it.
Right.
That's the key
And
word here, forgetting
I
or not
think,
forgetting, sorry.
just going into, a little bit, not that I want to dig deep into this biblical perspective, but like this, like, kind of God perspective, the faith perspective, spiritual perspective is, the idea of forgiveness is that, like, you know, God forgave us for our sins by, sending Jesus who died on the cross. Like, if you're a Christian, you know the story. Like, I'm not going to go into it, but like, forgiveness is something like we're called to do. Like, it's not something like it's like, if you can forgive, you should. No, like, it's one of the things that, like, in God's word, it actually says, like, we should forgive because that's what we're called to do.
Well, and also if you think about the human nature or culture, we're not perfect. We're not anywhere like if anyone ever if, I was going to say if anyone says that you're perfect or whatever, you're a narcissist. That's all I'm going to say right now. Now, I'm saying that at the end of the day we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have to forgive individuals or things or whatever. Whatever causes pain to that, to events, to people, to things or whatever. It's a part of life.
Yeah.
It's not
I like this next point because I think we haven't said this yet.
okay.
Um, I mean, we've kind of like bullet pointed around it,
Right.
but um, forgiveness is internal. We have said that it's internal, not transactional, and I think that that's like a key thing. Like, if you're keying into this episode, like, forgiveness isn't a transaction that you like. I forgave you, so now you change. Like, it doesn't. Forgiveness doesn't require the other person to apologize, to change, or even acknowledge what they did. And I think that's one of the hardest things to accept. Like, when if I'm forgiving somebody, it requires no effort on the other person to actually apologize for what they've done, acknowledge what they've done, or change who they are as a person. And
Right.
I have to internalize my forgiveness and be like, yeah, I forgive you and I'm letting it go. Not forgetting, but I'm letting it go out of my heart so that I'm not, struggling with this and holding on to it for the next 15 years.
Yeah, and that's the thing where, you know, because and this is where I'm saying about bottling your anger or all these mistakes that you might have maybe have to that you've done or whatever, and you keep letting it bottle in, and then of course maybe one day it explodes, and it just makes things worse. So the other thing is too is that when you do internalize this forgiveness, and you know you're saying to somebody like I'm sorry for what I've done. That is what it is. And and you're right, there is no it's almost like you're bouncing a ball off the wall and it's coming right back to you, because guess what, it doesn't mean that that person has to catch it, or like it has to grab it and say something back to you, or do anything else in that those exchange of words, because all you're saying is like hello, and then it's just like yep, it's out in the open, that's it. And then if nothing comes back to you, then that's what it is. And so that's where we're saying when you're doing this, it is the hardest part, because you're having to realize that nothing you do or say after that, you might get a transaction back from somebody else, or you might not get shit, and you're going to have to realize that guess what, you said it, that's what it is. You have to let some of that go and try to do better next time, because
Yeah.
that's all you can do.
Yeah. So I actually looked up the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Um, just so you know, if you're kind of like on the fence of like, well, what is the real difference between the two of them? Forgiveness is defined as an internal, unilateral process of letting go of resentment and the desire for revenge.
Mm. I love how it's revenge.
It says revenge. And reconciliation is a mutual process of restoring a damaged relationship, which requires repentance, change behavior, and rebuilt.
Well, if
So,
you think about it, I mean, reconciliation is definitely a marriage thing, or a
well, no, but I
relationship
mean,
thing. No, I know, but it
it's
just
forgiveness is like that internal process of letting go.
correct.
Reconciliation are the two people coming together, and it's that mutual agreement of like, yeah, let's fix this damaged relationship. You know, they and repentance is just that actual effort of saying like, I'm sorry, this is what I've done, and accepting, you know, I need to change. Let's try to rebuild this.
Right.
You're reconciling with your family member or your loved one or your friend that you wronged or your ex, whoever that person is,
Or your co-host.
or your co-host. Forgiveness is different. You're just letting go. Whether or not the person on the other side of that forgiveness actually changes and becomes a different person is completely irrelevant.
Right.
And
Well,
that is the key difference. So when, you know, we talk about some of the facts, like there's a study on interpersonal conflict, and it shows that people who separate forgiveness from reconciliation tend to maintain healthier boundaries long term.
mm,
There's a reason for that.
right, because they're recognizing both as being separate things, which makes a lot of sense. And then even with many therapeutic approaches, like including CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, they treat forgiveness as a personal release mechanism rather than a relational repair tool.
Right.
So I like that because you know, yes, like when you're, and it sounds weird, I'm going to say it like yes, I have been known to talk to myself. Everyone's like, oh, you got voices, you have to like release everything that you say. Most people, believe it or not, if you want to look this up, you actually talk to themselves. It's actually a normal thing that people do, and everyone's like, no, it's not. Well, then I guess you're the weird one because
'Cause
I know I do.
a lot of ADD or ADHD people do this because it's the way that they process the amount of thoughts that they have in their head.
Oh, great. So that means I probably have ADD or ADHD. Thank you, Matt. I'm glad I could find a diagnosis for myself. No,
Well, it's like 80% of people
I know.
have
Probably.
some level of it.
I mean, I probably have a little bit, but the point is though is that if you have to say certain things, to release, what is going on in your brain, because sometimes you're like, I always think of that the Patrick episode, or like SpongeBob. Basically, it's the at least I'm safe inside my mind. Yeah, well, you know what? I'm going to say this. You can say that all you want. It doesn't get you anywhere because you're going to look like a weirdo talking to yourself inside your mind because everyone's like, is that guy having a conversation with himself inside his mind? I'm like, no, maybe. Leave me alone. I'm just saying that sometimes just saying things out loud, it's like, writing stuff down. Or in that case, some people, like I said, for me, I have to release it in the moment because if I don't, it helps me
Yeah.
kind of think of the whole overall picture. Because, like you said, sometimes even when you're angry or you're by yourself, you can't just sit there and fester because that's, kind of going on here is, with forgiveness, it doesn't mean that they can't, or that doesn't mean they get access to you again, right? It just means that they don't, get to live rent free in your head. Ah, see? So in this case, whether you're, forgiving that individual or not, sure, you can say that, you can, continue to fester and you can continue to do all this. It doesn't mean that it has to be a continuous thought. It doesn't have to be that same thing over and over and over again because, as we've already mentioned, what happens to stress? What happens to anger? It can literally kill you, people. It
Yeah,
can literally
it can
do all these
manifest.
things.
So again, I'll move on to the next pillar. Just because we do have to get
All right, all right.
we do have like two other pillars after this one.
Of course we do.
So the cost of holding grudges. And we all know that one person who just holds on to things, holds on to grudges. Like that person wronged me, and I'm never gonna forgive him.
His name's Matt. No, John.
His name is John, and he just keeps pissing me off. And you know, anyways,
God.
you hold, holding on to that resentment, like you feel justified because, well, they did something wrong, right? Like they are in the wrong, I am in the right. Like they suck and I don't, and John sucks and I don't.
Oh, really? I see how this works now.
But over time, it becomes emotionally exhausting. It requires constant mental energy to replay that thing that went wrong, that they did wrong, to justify and to maintain the anger. You know, these grudges that we, can hold on to, they shift from being about the original event to becoming part of like a person's identity. Like people stop saying that hurt me and start living like, well, this is just who I am now. Like, it's just
Whatever.
and half the time I think when you're holding on to these grudges for a long term, time frame, you don't even remember the original event because it's just every time you see this person, it just look at this douchebag over here. Like he just keeps doing the same stupid crap all the time. Like, and you're like, why are you angry with him?
Because he's an
He's a
idiot.
douchebag and he's an idiot. Like, and you don't even remember like the original event. And it's like, why are you holding on to this? Like,
So, I know.
why can't you just walk up to this person and be like, I don't even know what we're angry at each other about, but like, we need to just move past this. Or you could just basically be like, you know what? I forgive you.
Or you could say,
And stop fucking holding on to it.
or you could just say, hey, you want to grab a beer sometime? No. Okay. Whoever's, in recovery, don't listen to that. No, but you're right. I mean, the problem is too, with like kind of like going on with that too, is that there is a psychological cost to this as well.
Yeah, we said it already.
We've said this already. In a
It
chronic
affects
anger,
your
right.
cortisol and it can affect you physically.
Well, it put a strain literally on your body. I mean, especially when it becomes like a long-term emotional state, so you're talking increased blood pressure, stress levels, everything. It's all been linked to these health and medical conditions and diseases and all these things. I mean,
The grudges will kill you.
I mean, seriously. I mean, think about
Like,
high
on.
blood pressure or like basically like a heart attack or I'm thinking of like heart disease and so on and so forth. Like literally, I mean, we're talking, and it's crazy that emotions will feed into everything that you do, and so especially with anger because it's so easy to maintain and so easy to just get into that mode. I mean, think about it. Have you? I mean, I know I've had this is sometimes it hasn't done it in a while, but like, have you ever just like get so angry and you're like, you know what, I'm fucking hungry. I need to eat something, and then you just keep eating and eating and eating, and then you're like, why the fuck did I just eat all that shit? And even though I was pissed off at this one thing, I haven't done it all the time, but I've done it here and there. But then you go, well, that was stupid, or something like stupid like that. I just think that, when you're in an emotional state, especially of like anger and things, sometimes you also do the stupidest shit. Like, and I feel like you don't realize it because you're so focused on this one thing that you just can't let go.
Yeah.
But, and here's the other thing, and this is I would say a really tough one too, is that of course with relationships, they suffer, right? Even unrelated ones. So people carrying unresolved anger are often projected onto others, which, no kidding on that one, becoming more reactive, defensive, or distant without realizing it. I can't tell you how many times this has happened to me, and I feel like to a lot of people, because the issue is because you're holding on to that anger, that unresolved you know, things that are going on, especially where, you're trying to forgive and you're trying to let go of these things, you're putting up a wall. You're putting a distance between people because you're not realizing what it is that you're doing and you're affecting literally everybody. It's not even just at home. It could be at work. It could be your co-host. No, it could be every day.
Wow.
He's like, can you stop saying co-host every time? No, I'm just saying it as a general term here. So the thing is that sometimes, sure, it is so easy to do all this, but you have to think about your long-term situation that is going on,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, do you really want to live alone? I know Matt would be like, hell, I'd live on an island by myself. No problem at all. Give me free food for the rest of my life. Not a problem. I go live by myself. Yeah, well, guess what? I've also told Matt that, guess what? We are social people. Because guess what? I don't think, naming a basically a volleyball, naming, what was it? What was his name in Castaway?
Why do you ask me stupid questions?
See, here you go. See, this is what I'm talking about, people. Anger right here. No, I'm talking about Castaway. I'm talking. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I know what movie you're talking about, and his name is Wilson.
There you go. You don't
I'm
want to
just
name a
asking,
guy.
why are you asking me dumb questions like this?
Well, because I wanted you to at least answer me. God
No,
damn
I
it.
don't forgive you.
See, exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is why grudges.
So yeah, well, grudges don't punish the other person, like I think, as much as people think they do. I think when you look at most cases, like, yeah, I haven't talked to my dad in 20 years, or I haven't talked to my brother or sister in 15 years. A lot of times, that other person has already moved on, and
Yeah.
sure, like, they would want the relationship to be as intact as possible, but there's also a level of, there's nothing I can do about it, while the other person just continues to hold on to this grudge. And it's like, this is what I said before. Like, you may not even know, like, what the initial event even is, like, that you're angry about. And it's like, we often think, like, well, this person did this, so I'm just not going to associate with them ever again. And then, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years pass. You don't even remember what you're angry about, initially. And then you just have this stupid grudge where it's like, yeah, I haven't talked to my brother in like 25 years. It's like, why? Well, because he's an idiot and he keeps messing up his life. Is he messing up his life because you think he's messing up his life? Or is he actually messing up his life? Like, it's just that thing. Like, I don't think it punishes the other person as much as you're thinking it does. It's like, I'm just not going to talk to him because
He's ugly.
whatever. It's like,
No, I don't.
there's a mental loop effect, like, where I think, like, our brains just revisit this unresolved situation, and it just loops in our brain. This event just loops and it loops and it loops. And in our brain, like, we're saying, like, I'm just not going to talk to him in the attempt that it solves the issue.
Mm.
But there's no forgiveness. There's no closure. And the reason it's a loop is because it just never stops. You just keep reliving that same thing over and over again. Like, my brother was an addict, so I just stopped talking to him. Like, I just don't need it. And he hurt his family. Like, he got a divorce. Like, he hurt my mother. And like, you have all of this stuff. And it's like, but 25 years later, your brother's no longer an addict, but you're still pissed off at him because of what happened 25 years ago.
Well, and I also like the word closure, because especially with forgiveness, you do want to have a sense of closure, and at least giving that person, like, hey, this is me getting it off my chest, and then maybe saying, hey, this is what it is, and then calling it a day.
No, it's just an open loop. Like, it
just continuously happens. And so, good old facts here, right? So studies in stress and health psychology link prolonged anger and resentment to higher risks of cardiovascular issues. No
It can
shit.
kill you, people.
Basically, it can kill you. And
I don't know how many times we've said that already, but hey, I mean, every
name of the
single
episode, it can kill you. No,
every single one of these things. I mean, the stress, the increased cardiovascular issues, emotional rumination. How about that for a word?
I've never heard of that.
Rumination.
Replaying events repeatedly. That's nice.
Yeah. Rumination is just replaying events repeatedly. It's strongly associated with anxiety and depressive symptoms. So if you've been struggling with anxiety and depression, you may want to look at
what has caused your stress.
What has caused this emotional rumination, or if you like, do you have somebody that needs forgiveness from you?
Mm-hmm.
It's not them. And I'm going to say this. It's not them, it's you. Like,
Well,
whether they change as a person is completely irrelevant. I said this probably like 3 times already. Like, it's completely irrelevant to you accepting and moving past it.
so here's another thing to keep in mind too, and this is where with Matt and I having the mental health kind of background too. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen people that have this like anxiety levels and depression and all these other symptoms that they might get. The problem is there's trauma related. Most of the time, it's usually trauma, and the reason for that is because they haven't either one forgiven themselves or they haven't you know found a way to reconcile whatever the situation was that made them feel this way. And so when you think about how our society, yeah, we have a lot of people that have anxiety, we have a lot of people that have depression, and so on and so forth. I can name all these other things. This is where we're saying that if you learn those differences between forgiveness and reconciliation, this could help resolve some of these unrelated issues to really hopefully get your life back on track. Because at the end of the day, we're not saying that everyone's perfect, but at the same time, you can definitely prevent, especially a lot of these issues, like the things that we were talking about, this higher risk of cardiovascular disease and weakened immune response. I mean, there's just so much there. So, like I said, stress can kill you. Basically, cortisol levels can definitely kill you. And again, these prolonged states of basically just these high intense, levels of, anger and depression and all this stuff. I mean, it's just not honestly, it's just not worth, dealing with and having to continuously, deal with these loops. I was about to say, like kind of like a cassette player. And then you just rewind it again and then you go back to it. Everyone's like, the fuck is a cassette tape? Like, well, you know what? If you were born at a certain time, you know what a cassette tape is. If you don't, well, then you might as well go look one up. But then, you know what? Here's our good old, hopefully last pillar, if I'm not mistaken. Choosing to.
I'm working on the
Oh,
Evolve Blueprint Challenge right
okay,
now.
then you do that.
It's not in there.
So choosing to say F you. No, I'm just kidding. It's
F
forgive
you,
you.
John.
F you, Matt. Anyways, no, forgive you. Forgive you, not really F you, but so again, forgiveness is a choice. Keep that in mind. It's not a feeling, waiting until you feel ready, often means waiting forever because the emotion doesn't naturally resolve on its own. So again, it is a choice. It's a matter of words that you're saying to another individual, like we've been saying. It's not, and that's the other thing, and I think this is an interesting part to this too, is forgiveness is also sometimes it's not it is a timing thing. Because sometimes you're right. It can be immediate or it could take 25 years because your brother was an addict. I don't know what's going on there, but okay. And so timing can also mean, a lot of things because hopefully when you're doing this, I'm not saying it has to be like immediately when it happens. Maybe give some time, but don't wait 25 years to then forgive somebody because I feel like that's way too damn long for anybody.
No, I mean, and like this says, I mean, if you wait till you're like, well, I need to be ready, you're never gonna be ready.
No one's gonna be ready.
You're never gonna be ready, and forgiveness is that choice. Like you have to accept the choice of I'm going to forgive them.
But not forget.
Right, you're not forgetting, but you're saying, F you because you're making the choice. It's not about them. It's not about what, necessarily what they've done, whether they're going to repent and be, like sorry and actually, that's what repentive is basically is like you acknowledge, like somebody acknowledging and being sorry and making the commitment to change. Um, it has nothing to do with them. It's all about the choice that you're making. And the process isn't necessarily like a one and done. It usually isn't. You don't just like, hey, I forgive you, and then you just kind of move on. Like sometimes you have to forgive the same situation multiple times as those emotions can resurface. Like
Right.
sometimes it's just like you can say, and mean it in your heart, And then when that thing loops back, like you have to, I mean, it's just something like you have to accept it and move on.
Right.
If you haven't moved on and 2 months later, you're still replaying that event and it's making you angry and you're starting to like, that's, you haven't really moved past it. Like you haven't really forgiven. Now, we are always, like we have said in this episode, like you forgive but not forget. Forgiveness can coexist with boundaries.
Correct.
You can forgive somebody completely, but you, and I said this before, I think I said this a couple times too, like, you can still limit or eliminate their role in your life moving forward. So you can tell somebody, I forgive you, but you're not going to be part of my life. And whether they accept it or not is not on you. You just doing the act of saying, hey, I forgive you, but I need to move on. I cannot continue like having a friendship with you, even though I'm forgiving you for what happened. Like I can't do it. And you're creating that boundary. It's perfectly normal. It
Yeah.
happens all the time, but you cannot go back and keep replaying that and be hurt by it.
Right.
Forgiveness is not about that. Like forgiveness is meaning you're moving past, and this is why it's the hardest thing to do
Yeah.
because you have to now choose peace over chaos.
Mm. And I like this too. I know we kind of jumped ahead a little bit, or I guess I'm going back a little bit here, but I like the part right here. It's a release, not a reward, because it is true, because you're releasing that pain. You're releasing that hurt, that all these things that come into play, and it is not a reward because at this point you're just letting, again, let it go. Yeah. It's letting that shit go on and exist somewhere else. You've stated your piece, you've done all that. Now you're hoping that there isn't any chaos, but at the same time, sure, maybe sometimes when you forgive somebody, there could be a little chaos depending on what that situation is or who that person is or whatever, but it's not, again, and this is why I mentioned the word instinct, or the words instant gratification. It does not just happen overnight. It doesn't just
No.
immediately disappear. Like it's going to continuously be there. And so until you release that, yeah, sure. Guess what? Then all you're going to get from that, even though it's not really a reward, it's more you're finally getting rid of that hurt or that pain, or that maybe that's something that you either caused, or maybe you're the one just saying, you know what, I'm done. Like you said about the boundaries, like I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. End of story.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
And I think that there's, when you're looking at forgiveness, and I'm just going to say this outright because I feel like maybe not so much of a guy thing, but a woman thing
See, I was wanting to say
where
this, but go ahead.
where you'll get I forgive you. And then the other person is just like, for what? Like, like there's no clear definition. Is like, I forgive you. For what?
Exactly.
If you're truly forgiving somebody, please tell them
What it
what
is?
you are forgiving them for.
Because
Like,
they're not gonna have a
make sure
fucking
that
clue.
they know, like, I am forgiving you for
Yada yada yada.
yada yada yada. Whatever the issue is, whatever the hurt is, whatever the trauma is, you know, clearly tell the person why you're forgiving them and then move on, because that's like, I think that like that's the key. If you are forgiving somebody and you're defining it, one, I can guarantee the other person already knows what they've done wrong. But if you simply walk up to them and be like, you know what, I don't care, but I forgive you, you're gonna hear the crickets, and it's like the other person's gonna be like, for what?
Or in Matt's case, what the fuck are you talking about?
'Cause it just, when you can define it and you can say like, hey, I forgive you for cheating, or I forgive you for, robbing me, or I forgive you for
being on the no, I mean,
I forgive you for being ugly, John. And
that's pretty screwed up there, man. I mean, God.
you
Anyways,
said you were ugly at the store.
yeah. Oh, no, I don't think so. um, and so here's another thing too, right? There's strength in choosing peace over being right, and I think this is also a very hard, and this can go both ways for both men and women, and again, whoever you want to be called. Um, it's definitely
that next
something.
sentence is
Yeah, no, that doesn't mean ignoring injustice. It means not letting it define your future. Now, this is a very hard one,
it's like a
especially.
that's like superhero shit right there.
That is true, but it's also this is a very marriage thing. This is a very like at least or a relationship thing. Let me rephrase that because I mean whether you're in a relationship, like girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever, or even a marriage or whatever, it's very hard because there are some times where I know for men, we try to choose the peace because even though we may be right and we're like,
a
what,
lot of us are very prideful, and I think that's
and that's hard.
that's hard. And when we're looking at that injustice, and I mean, as far as relationships, I always look at cheating because it's one of the biggest things that happens in a lot of relationships is, being a man, like we're very prideful. So if our spouse or whatever like cheats, we look at that injustice and it completely defines the future of the relationship. And what we're
That's a
saying
tough
is
one.
you don't have to let that single event define your future. And sometimes like you just need to choose that piece. Now, I can say that because it's like if it happened once, sure. But if you have a significant other where it's like two, three, four times, that's where we're saying very earlier, like you may have to look at eliminating that person's role from your life.
Well,
But it's one of those things that like it doesn't mean that it has to define your future. Like that injustice does not have to define your future.
and the other big part of this too, like you've already mentioned before, is that it can complicate things, especially if there's, you know, individuals or circumstances that can make that harder, especially when you're talking about cheating, especially like if you have kids or if there's a complicated situation where, sure, you have kids, but, you're screwed either way because you don't know where you're going to live or what, so there's all these different factors. So I'm not saying that, yeah, you have to be set. Like this is like you have to be in this situation because that's what it is. What we're saying is that, given your choice or given those things, you have to think of the bigger picture because, whether or not you want to continuously live in a cycle of chaos all the time is
Right.
is really up to you. But at the end of the day, you know, again, stress can kill you.
And I'm not saying there wouldn't be boundaries or consequences for the other person. You don't have to let it define you, but it's not like you're just like, hey, let's just go back to the way we were before because that cannot happen
Clearly.
because your significant other who, you're sad, you're mad for them cheating is just going to go do it again. You have to have those boundaries and you have to have those consequences and you have to be like, listen, every single night, like you need to give me your phone so that I can look through it. Like you need to tell me where you are whenever you go out. Like
I will.
on phones, like you're able to put like, I mean, Danielle and I have this on our phones, even though like she has an iPhone, I have an Android, but like I can pull out my phone and I can tell you exactly where she's at.
Well, I was also going to say the other. If we're talking about this piece, trust has to be earned again, and that's
Right.
the biggest thing because if this already happened and you have to build that trust again because now you're in this state of yep, you're already forgiven, you're already, whatever. You're having to rebuild the same thing that you already have already had, but now you have to redo it all over again.
Yeah,
But
the trust is a big piece, and I mean, unless you're unless your partner or your spouse is like the CIA,
well, that too.
um, there should be really no. I mean, unless you're like just go like you need to get rid of your phone and live like as a hobbit in your house and not ever like you have to make the boundaries and the consequences at least comparable. You know what I mean? Like
Correct.
you can't make them like these impossible like
Expectations.
expectations that can't be followed, but it's one of those things like, you know, I need to be able to see your text messages. I need to be able to know who you're talking to. You know, if it's, if it's your wife or whatever, you need to be like, listen, no more hugging any dudes. Like, if you're going to talk to somebody, you know, grab me, but it has to be like, there has to be these consequences that, like, you know, if you're texting a guy that's not me, include me in the thread. Like, maybe it's not forever, but the other person has to earn that trust.
Hmm.
They don't have to be sorry necessarily, because that's not what we're saying. Like, forgiveness isn't about them being sorry. It's not about them repenting. But if they want to be part of the relationship and they don't want it to end, they're going to follow through as long as the consequences are followable. Like as
Yeah,
long as
justifiable too.
justifiable. And if we bring faith back into this, I kind of already said a lot of this, but forgiveness is framed as something we give because we received it. We were forgiven for our sins, and it's not because we deserved it or the other person deserves it. So if you take faith and you take biblical forgiveness,
Mm.
we are called to forgive because we didn't deserve it. Like, we don't deserve forgiveness from God, but he gives it to us.
Right.
That's what's called grace,
Mm.
you know? And we are called to give forgiveness because the other person doesn't deserve it, but because we received it, we are called to give it. And I think that, when you look at it that way, like it flips that motivation of, yeah, they probably don't deserve it, but we're still called to do that. No matter if they lied to you, if they cheated you, if they robbed you, if they whatever, doesn't matter. We're called to do it. It's not the easiest thing to do, and I understand like saying it and doing it are like they're two completely different things, but when you're looking at like, I've been a Christian for a long time, and my Bible says I should forgive because I was forgiven. And it's not like you should forgive when you feel like it, or you should forgive when the situation is right. It just says to forgive. It's an action. Like I said, it's easier said than done, and I get it depending on, the situation, but I'm just throwing it out there. Like, that's what the word says. And
True.
um
And I think, looking at some of the facts here, right? So, especially like what we've been talking about. So, for example, right? So, research in, positive psychology links forgiveness practices with improved emotional regulation, reduced stress, and better long term mental health outcomes.
oh, you don't
No
say.
kidding. And then forgiveness interventions and therapy, interesting, have shown measurable improvements in mood, anxiety levels, and overall life satisfaction. I'm pretty sure we've already said this. Stress can kill you. Anxiety, moods, all these other things.
Yeah.
If you actually just do it, or at least work on it, and have hopefully the right supports and all these things, it doesn't mean you have to live in this anger cycle that most people, I feel like that is an easier way to live, and it's not. I mean, because
It's really not.
it's really probably the worst thing you could ever do. And I think, especially where, I'm going to say this real quick too, Matt. People will say that mental health, or at least like, seeing a therapist, or practicing different things, whether it's spiritual, physical, emotional, whatever you want to do. They say it's a bunch of hoopla, or like hoopla, no, or like a bunch of basically bullshit. I call your bullshit with bullshit, because it actually is proven that if you actually do, I'm not saying everyone has to have a therapist. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you actually work on whatever it is, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever that section of your life is that you need more help on, if you actually start to work on that, by doing some of these things that we've already said, you can actually notice a real difference. And that's where I'm saying it. If you're saying, well, okay, well, fucking depression's, it's a bunch of bullshit or anxiety. No, because it's literally proven that a lot of your, uh, especially physical and emotional, have a lot to do with each other. And so at the end of the day, you cannot tell me that your, heart problems probably aren't connected to something that you probably have to do emotionally in your head.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, you do have to realize that none of the shit that we're saying is actually bullshit. It's actually, there are facts, there are things that you have to learn and actually hopefully do. And so when Matt was talking about the whole, it's easier said than done. Well, guess what? You got to start from somewhere. And whether that takes you, 5 days to learn or fucking 25 years to learn, at least you're starting it.
Yeah.
And at least you're doing it.
I mean, that's the whole idea behind Evolve. And I will say this, like, when it comes to, forgiveness and doing all this stuff, because it is important, and not all situations are
Forgivable?
like extreme.
Well,
Like,
that too.
you may just have somebody who fibbed, and that just sets you into that grudge mode. It sets you into that, like, well, they said this and they lied. Like, maybe they were like, well, they were going to pick me up at 7 and they never showed. So now I hate them forever. And it's just one of those things that's like, you know, it's not like forgiveness isn't always like these huge events like, oh, my wife cheated on me, or my husband, cheated on me, or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be like these huge events. It could be just something simple like, John was supposed to come to my house and he never did.
That motherfucker.
And
yeah, I know.
I called him and he didn't answer, and like, now I'm just like, well, we were supposed to go out and now I feel wronged. Like, it's a stupid thing. Like, he could have been busy, but I'm not looking at what his situation is. I'm just looking at, like, he said this, he's not here, so he just must
SOB.
be a prick and blowing me off. Like,
Yep, you're right.
and it's not like a huge event. And when we look at now, like, our blueprint challenge, like, yeah, we're going to challenge you to work on something. Whether you do it or not is completely irrelevant to the challenge, but we hope that you guys are looking at these challenges and actually trying to do them, because this one's pretty simple. I mean, it's not, like I said, it sounds simple, but it can be as simple as just doing it. And if you think of one person that you're still angry at, ask yourself one honest question. Is holding on to this actually helping me anymore? And it's not whether they deserved it. It's not whether they have apologized, not whether they were wrong. Just this. What is this anger costing you right now?
And so here's another piece to this, right? So then do one thing this week to stop feeding it, right? So you can do just these 4 examples, right? Don't replay the argument again. Don't stalk their social media.
Oh, for God's sakes, don't do
God
it.
dang it! You stop being a stalker, John. Don't bring the situation up for the 100th time. Don't let that hurt define your mood for the entire day. All right, man. See that no, I'm joking. He's like,
No, but those are, I
yeah,
mean,
it's true.
if you do anything, I mean, you could do all of these.
Yeah, stop stalking me, man.
Don't replay the argument. Don't go on their social media and judge every little thing that they're doing. Don't keep bringing up like the same topic all the time. Like, did you hear about some? Like, just stop it. Like,
Not
and
gonna.
John, stop stalking me and coming to my house.
Yeah,
Like,
oh, see, I knew you were gonna say that. He's like,
no,
stop
I'm
just
kidding.
randomly showing up. That'd be great.
Don't let the hurt define your mood for the entire day. Like, even if you do one, that's fine. But like you could seriously do a lot of these and just focus on today.
True.
Don't replay the argument today. Don't stalk their social media today. Don't bring the situation up today. Don't let that hurt define your mood today. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can stop feeding into that anger and that situation. And that's pretty much it. Like, you don't have to make your goal of becoming best friends again or, reconciling the relationship. The goal is just taking that one step towards peace instead of marinating in your anger and your guilt and your trauma and whatever the hurt is, right?
It's
That's
true.
how we adapt, overcome, and evolve.
So here's our little closing note here. Forgiveness isn't clean. It's not easy, and it's definitely isn't fair. So neither is carrying something for years that was only meant to hurt you once. So maybe the real F word isn't the one you shout when you're angry. Maybe it's the one you say when you're finally done being controlled by it. Either way, that's on you. So stay connected, stay thinking, and as always, you need to stay geeky.